Hello, everyone. It's Michael Shermer, and it's time for another episode of The Michael Shermer Show. This is a special solo edition on the attempted assassination of President Trump on Saturday afternoon, late afternoon. I was in a Uber when I was flying back from Las Vegas at Freedom Fest, and I just opened my phone and I'm just sitting there reading the stuff, and the Uber driver turns out to be a Trump fan. So he couldn't believe what I was telling him. And he called his dad, who apparently is also a Trump fan, and they were relieved that he was alive and going strong. And they were really going to vote for him then. And I have a feeling there's a lot of people like that. We've already seen Elon Musk and Bill Ackerman and others, prominent figures, saying now they're going to vote for Trump. It's been an incredible, just the last couple of days, between what happened to Trump and Biden's cognitive infirmities. The election were held tomorrow. I think it would be a massive landslide for Trump, along the lines of Reagan beating Mondale back in the 1980s, one of the biggest landslides in American history. In any case, I thought I would just make a few comments about the conspiracy theories already surrounding the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. I will call him an assassin, this man, Thomas Matthew Crooks, because he did assassinate at least one person. There's two other people wounded, one of them critically, so we'll see if it's a mass shooting or just the one. But in any case, it was interesting. I mentioned I was flying back from Freedom Fest. At Freedom Fest, the day before, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was speaking, and I thought I could meet him. I was hoping to meet him. I wanted to give him a copy of Conspiracy because I think he could use some critical thinking about conspiracy theories. He goes way farther than I do on some of these. As you know, he thinks the CIA assassinated both his uncle, JFK, and his father, RFK, among other conspiracy theories that he embraces. And so I got there a little early. I already spoken the day before, so I was familiar with the green room for the speakers, as I'd been there many times, meeting all the other speakers, including that day they had a debate amongst all the other political party candidates, the Libertarian Party candidate, the Green Party, Jill Stein, the Constitution Party, Randall Terry, and even Cornel West was there, who was a super cool guy. He's just an independent. And, as you know, RFKJ is running as an independent. And he gave quite a speech. But before that, I thought, okay, I'm just sitting here in the green room. He's going to just walk in. How naive I was. I was even sitting there with Mark Skousen, who's the director of Freedom Fest. I thought, well, they won't kick us out. But I noticed that earlier, like hours before, there were security guards. There were men in uniform and guns. There were dogs. At least one German Shepherd dog was kind of walking around leashed, smelling everything. And I thought, wow, this is impressive. None of the other candidates, by the way, had any kind of security at all. In fact, I think most people didn't even know who they were. Yeah, so I didn't get to give RFKJ a copy of my book. At the last minute, they let us know that he was entering and exiting the building in a separate doorway, and we would not know what that is. And sure enough, he just came out on stage from who knows where and left, and that was it. So I was impressed with that. If you want to go back in time, when I was an undergraduate at Pepperdine University, 1975, President Gerald Ford came to speak, and it was quite the event. Days before, maybe 2 days before his appearance, there were Secret Service people walking around the campus, just kind of checking things out. Pepperdine in Malibu is on the side of a hill, so buildings on top of buildings. They're sort of slanted that way. So that morning that President Ford spoke, we noticed there were sharpshooters on the roofs of many buildings looking down where he would be speaking. I remember being very impressed with that. That comes to mind here because that's exactly what happened at the attempted assassination of Trump. It's early still. There's a lot of uncertainty, which generates conspiracy theories. This man, Thomas Matthew Crooks, barely a man, 20 years old, barely out of high school, described by his high school friends as a loner, had few friends, did not have a notable friend group that he hung out with. was bullied, was a registered Republican, whatever that means, but gave $15 to a Democratic progressive group on the inauguration day of President Biden. So all that's to say, who knows what any of that means. He did get the AR-15 style rifle from his father. His father had it for many years, and he just apparently left the house, grabbed the rifle, said, "I'm going to the shooting range." And his dad said, "Oh, okay." And then, what happened. And now the father, as of this date recording here on July 16th, has not issued a statement yet. He is wisely staying mum until he knows more about what actually happened. But there are many peculiarities. So I'm going to go through here the reasons why people believe conspiracy theories. That one of which is the weird anomalies that appear in any event that's large. Okay, let me just go through some of these that I outline in the book. The book, by the way, is called Conspiracy: Why the Rational Believe the Irrational. And the subtitle is the thesis of the book that, in fact, it's not necessarily irrational to believe conspiracy theories because enough of them turn out to be true that it pays to be safe rather than sorry, to assume the worst just in case. So I don't think that's the case here at the moment. I very seriously doubt there was a conspiracy, by which I mean two or more people plotting in secret to gain an unfair advantage illegally or immorally, or to kill somebody without anyone's knowledge, or without their knowledge, obviously, or consent. I don't think that's what was happening here. If there's a conspiracy, it's a conspiracy of incompetence, probably. And that is the current narrative on this day from the Biden administration, that it was, and the mainstream media, that it was just incompetence. The Secret Service just messed up. So let's go through a few of these factors that generate conspiracy theories, and they are all over the internet within minutes of the shooting. And then here yesterday, Monday, and this morning, I noticed there's tons of them floating around social media. Event magnitude is one of the big ones. The larger the event, the more focus is on it. There are shootings. Well, there's mass public shootings, about one a week now. Mass public shooting defined by the FBI is 4 or more people killed in one incident. There's at least once a week now, 50 a year or more. It varies from year to year, but roughly speaking, every week there's a mass public shooting. And then individual shooting, 1 or 2 people, say, killed in a dispute of some kind every day. In fact, many times a day. And depending on which database you use, it could be even every hour somebody is shot dead with a gun. So with that kind of background base rate, we just barely even notice it. Most of these don't even make the news. But this obviously, the attempted assassination of a former president who is the leading candidate for the Republicans to run for president. And as the polls go this week, he's probably going to be back in the White House. That's big. That's huge. And somebody was killed, a supporter of Trump who was sitting behind him in the stands behind the podium there. So event magnitude is certainly a factor. Then there's a proportionality bias. That is a large magnitude event of which something bad happens. We want the cause to be, roughly speaking, proportional to the size of the event. The analogy I use in the book is, the Holocaust, one of the worst genocides in human history, one of the worst things anyone has ever suffered. And what was the cause of this? The Nazi regime, one of the worst political regimes in human history. So there's a balance there. It kind of makes sense. Big event, big cause. This is what drives people crazy about other major events. The assassination of JFK, assassination of MLK, the assassination of RFK, 9/11, the death of Princess Diana. These are caused by lone assassins, lone actors, lone deranged nuts, as I'm going to explain shortly. The idea that could happen, a major event like that, has such a minor, trivial cause, causes cognitive dissonance, or cognitive, really just an imbalance, let's say. There's a disproportional sense there that doesn't fit right. I heard this with 9/11. You're telling me 19 guys with box cutters, brought down the World Trade Center buildings? Come on. But, as I show in the book, that's exactly how it would happen, because 19 guys with box cutters and no one is doing the kind of security scanning at airports we have now. That's exactly how they could sneak through and nobody notice. In a free society, in the nooks and crannies of a liberal democracy like ours with 340 million people, just normal, everyday people without some big, deep plot are difficult to find. They can hide in a free society like that. The death of Princess Diana was another one of these. She's a princess. She's beautiful. She's famous, one of the most famous people in history. And the cause of her death, drunk driving, speeding, no seatbelt. Come on. That's the way ordinary people die. In fact, the streets of highways of America, about 35 to 40,000 a year die in automobile accidents. Most of those are some combination of that. No seatbelt, speeding, drunk driving. So it just doesn't feel right, though. Or, JFK, assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald, some lone nut. Even Jackie said, just this little communist killed my husband. MLK, RFK, their assassins were just nobodies. And it just doesn't feel right. It feels like an event of that size should have a cause of equal size. Major, large magnitude events in which there is a disproportional cause also lead to anomaly hunting. Anomaly hunting is the big one. That is, you just go searching for anything that doesn't quite fit. And there are always anomalies in any event that you look at. In the JFK one, the most famous one, I wrote about this in Conspiracy, that this guy had an umbrella on the grassy area behind where the Zapruder film was shot as Kennedy was driving by. And what's he doing there with an umbrella? It's a beautiful sunny day, not a cloud in the sky. Why would somebody have an umbrella? Oh, the umbrella must have been a gun of some sort, or it was a signal. He, raises the umbrella, and that's a signal to the shooters to take their shots, and so on and so on. Anyway, this poor guy came out about a decade after the fact, and then decades later after that, still, there was a short documentary film made by the New York Times, and in which they showed exactly what he was doing. He said, I was there to protest Kennedy. I didn't like the Kennedy administration. I didn't like his father. His father was supportive of the appeasement of Hitler. And when Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain came off the plane after meeting with Hitler, at Munich, in which they basically gave him carte blanche to take what he wants, Chamberlain was there with his umbrella. So the umbrella stood as a symbol for protesting against appeasement, of which the Kennedy patriarch, Joseph Kennedy, supported. So that's what this guy's motive was. Had nothing to do with signaling the shooters, or the umbrella was not a gun, and so on. That's a kind of typical anomaly you can find if you look close enough. And there are hundreds of these surrounding the JFK, MLK, and RFK assassinations, as well as, of course, 9/11. Hundreds and hundreds of anomalies about 9/11. Okay, there's a bunch with the shooter. Let's just go through some of these. I bring these up because I think here I would apply what I call the conspiracism principle. Before you attribute something to malice, first consider whether it might be the result of incompetence and chance. I think probably the narrative that we're hearing now from the mainstream media and critics of the Biden administration is that the Secret Service here on Saturday was incompetent, and there was some random chance events that just unfolded. But the conspiracy theories is that because of these anomalies I'm going to go through here, that there was something more afoot. That is, perhaps the Secret Service was in on it. Maybe the Biden administration ordered it, ordered Trump assassinated, or somebody in the administration or somebody in the Secret Service. Why did the cop who confronted the shooter on the roof not have his gun ready so that he can engage him instead of standing down? Apparently, there were people, you could see these videos online yesterday and this morning, with a counter in which you can hear Trump speaking in the background. He's several minutes into his speech, and you can hear people way off, maybe 100 meters away from where Trump is speaking, pointing to the building and the roof and the guy on the roof. And there, of course, everybody has a cell phone, so there's tons of videos of this, and you can see the guy. You can see crooks crawling across there, and they're pointing at him. And there goes, look, there's a guy with a gun. And they're telling the local police, there's a guy with a gun. And by one count on a video I watched this morning, 2 minutes and 10 seconds before the shot was taken that hit Trump's ear, between the time that they first, were screaming, lots of people were screaming, there's a guy with a gun, there's a guy with a gun, and they're yelling at the local police. One of these police officers apparently climbed up to the top of the roof on that ladder. Come back to that. But he didn't have his gun ready. So this guy Crooks just whirled and pointed his AR-15 style rifle at the guy, and he fell back or leaped off. Or it's not clear exactly what happened, but he could have stopped him right there. You would have thought that the local police might have said something like, maybe they have walkie-talkies or some way of communicating with the Secret Service that's up on the stage. Get Trump off the stage. There's a guy with a gun, and so on. The shooter appears to have accessed the rooftop via a large ladder. There's some videos you can see this rather large ladder. How did that ladder get there? Did he bring the ladder? Did the Secret Service set the ladder up there because they were going to put a sharpshooter there? It turns out that building was being used as a staging area for the local police. Maybe they put the ladder there. Maybe the ladder was just there, just randomly there, and the shooter crooks got lucky. We just don't know, but that's one of those anomalies that makes conspiracists go, hey, somebody put that there as part of the plan. Since the Secret Service sharpshooter shot and killed crooks, one shot to the head, boom. And you can see in the non-blurred photographs, the body laying there and there's blood on his head. That appears to be the shot. Trump himself said they shot him between the eyes. But whatever, the initial shots that crooks took, if you listen to the audio, watch the video, but you hear the audio, the shots taken, it sounds like he shoots 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's a slight pause, and then you hear bam, bam. And this is the sharpshooters, the Secret Service sharpshooters, shooting him dead. How did they do that? Now, some of the stories are that they already had him in their target site, and the moment he took the shot, they shot him dead. Is this because they have a rule, like, no shooting on warning, or like in nuclear policy, no launch on warning? But we do have a launch on warning. And there's been several retired Secret Service agents that have given interviews in the media yesterday in which they said there's no such policy. If you see a threat, take the shot. Okay, why didn't they take the shot? I mean, this guy did not look like he could be an agent, so maybe I better not kill him. Maybe he's a local cop, I better not take the shot. No, he doesn't look like that at all. If you look at the pictures of this guy, he looks like a 20-year-old kid, just a nobody. Long hair and glasses, and he wasn't wearing a uniform or anything like that. That's pretty curious. Again, probably incompetence and chance and so on. Another one of the anomalies people are pointing out, and some of these retired Secret Service agents said, had it been me on the stage and I brought Trump to the floor and then hauled him off to his vehicle, he would have never stood up and pumped his fist and said, fight, fight, fight. They would have never let him do that because he's exposed. You don't know in that moment of just a few seconds of shots how many shooters there are. There could have been 3 or 4 shooters. So to allow your charge there, Trump, to stand back up and be exposed, there's his head. He could have blown right off right then. So that's a curious thing. Now, maybe Trump is he is a big guy and he weighs a lot. Maybe they just couldn't stop him from standing back up. You could hear him, let me put my shoes back on. And, I gotta say something, whatever he said, something like that. Okay, maybe that's just it. And also, the mainstream critic of criticisms of this is that maybe there was some diversity hires in the Secret Service. We know that the director of the Secret Service, who's already been doing some interviews, says she will not stand down. She will not resign. calls for her resignation. She had this 30 by 30. We're going to have 30% women in the Secret Service by 2030. It's true. The woman in front of Trump is 5'4", the media is reporting, and Trump is 6'3". So how does a 5'4" woman protect her charge there when he's clearly head and shoulders larger than her? And somebody, again, could take the shot. The Secret Service is supposed to get in front of the charge. They're supposed to protect them. Okay, short of bringing him down to the ground, how are you going to do that? Also, maybe in the incompetence area, she and some of the other agents seem to be fumbling around with their guns, unholstering them, trying to reholster them. Anyway, the investigations that will continue now, I'm sure for months, maybe even years, about exactly what happened. We'll get to the bottom of this. Now, to be fair, maybe that's what happens during a shooting. I've never been in a shooting. It's entirely possible I would panic. I would have no idea what to do. I would do stupid things. But I'm not trained for this. I'm not in the Secret Service. I don't have training in those kind of situations. So, but they do. So you would think that they would have rehearsed this a lot. Like, if you see something, say something. There's the guy on the roof. We're hearing these reports, so we should do something. Take the shot because it looks like he could be a threat. And unholster and reholster your gun in this particular sequence. Here's what you do with the president when something like this happens. I mean, you heard some other voices from the Secret Service. What do we do? Where do we take him? And it's like, what? I mean, you take him to the car. He's the armored cars right there. Okay. So that's pretty weird. And there's probably going to be a dozen more anomalies as people pick through the videos and try to, figure out exactly what happened. Okay. So a few other of these factors. There's the argument from personal incredulity because I don't buy the explanation. Let's just go with the probably incompetence and chance, not malice, not a conspiracy by the Biden administration or the Secret Service to have Trump assassinated. By the way, I've been tweeting about the kind of characteristics of this guy, Thomas Matthew Crooks. I mean, does he look like an assassin? Does his profile fit that of a hitman? No, I mean, not even remotely close. Now, when I brought this up with conspiracists about Lee Harvey Oswald and Sirhan and so on, they say, well, that's exactly who the CIA or whoever would pick so that he does look like a lone nut. Well, it is very likely a lone nut for sure. That's a reasonable counter, I suppose. But again, what's more likely? That the Secret Service plotted to assassinate President Trump or that they're just incompetent? I'm going with the incompetent at the moment. Then there's the hindsight the personal incredulity, because I don't buy it. Therefore, there must have been a conspiracy because I can't explain it. Hindsight bias after the fact. Of course, we go searching for plausible connecting the dots. And the connecting in the dots is what I call patternicity, the tendency to find meaningful patterns in random noise. So if you're anomaly hunting, every little anomalous data point gets connected into some larger plot, patternicity, with the hindsight bias. And then finally, teleological thinking. This is goal-oriented thinking. That is to say, everything happens for a reason. Nothing happens by chance. That's the kind of underlying psychology behind conspiracism. Everything happens for a reason. If you listen to people like Alex Jones, there is no chance. There's no randomness at all in the world. Everything is connected, okay? This is simply not true. That's not the way the world works. It's mostly random. It's mostly just chance events happening, contingency, I call it. Again, sometimes there are conspiracies, enough of them that it pays to be a little, maybe say rationally paranoid just in case. But for the most part, let's start with the incompetence and chance hypothesis over the malice hypothesis, unless it's Vladimir Putin, in which case it's very probably malice. All right, I thought I'd go through just a final few comments here for a bit on lone assassins, lone actors. That is what is most common in history. So if we take a Bayesian approach, like let's compile some priors to see what we know, the base rate of whatever it is we're talking about, and then from that, even the levels of uncertainty we have here on July 16th, still much we don't know. What's more likely? Okay, I call this Hume's maxim. What's more likely? That the miracle happened or that the people who describe the miracle are simply mistaken. What's more likely? That there's a vast left-wing or liberal conspiracy to assassinate Trump, or that they're just incompetent? Okay. Given the fact that most assassination attempts in American history, assassinations and attempts, were by lone gunmen, leads me anyway, in a Bayesian way, to the credence that this shooter, Crooks, was very likely a lone assassin. There's nobody else on the videos that we've seen, and we'll have to wait for evidence just in case. Maybe there's some whistleblower in the Secret Service that says, yes, it was a plot, and I overheard them talking about this, or I saw a memo about this, or somebody was paid off, something like that. But there's nothing like that at the moment. So I have a whole chapter on this, and 2 chapters in conspiracy, one on JFK in particular, which I'll come to in a minute. But just a brief history in the United States. No fewer than 4 presidents have been assassinated while in office: Abraham Lincoln, James Garfield, William McKinley, and John F. Kennedy. So let's set Kennedy aside for a moment. I'll come back to that because that's the big one. Lincoln was assassinated by a conspiracy of Southern supporters who were hoping to keep what they called the South's War of Independence, War of Secession, alive. What we call the Civil War, which was over by the time Lincoln was shot. They wanted to keep it going and get it going again. So there was, of course, the most famous one, John Wilkes Booth, who's the one who shot Lincoln in the back of the head. His co-conspirators were Lewis Powell, David Harold, and George Azerodt. Powell and Harold were assigned to kill Secretary of State William Seward, while Azerodt was supposed to murder Vice President Andrew Johnson. In other words, this conspiracy intended to decimate the Lincoln administration, not just get rid of the president. They call that decapitating the administration. Real conspiracies are hard to pull off. I have a whole section on that. The more people that have to be involved, the more elements that have to come together at just the right time, the less likely the conspiracy theory is to be true. Here's how it typically goes, right? Only Booth succeeded in his assignment. Azerodt lost his nerve, got drunk, and entirely abandoned his mission to kill Vice President Johnson. Powell lied his way into Seward's home, where the Secretary of State was in bed recovering from a carriage accident. So he had a neck brace on after this accident. He's lying there in the bed. After overpowering Seward's son, Powell managed to stab Seward with a knife, but the neck splint blocked the blade from hitting the jugular, and the Secretary of State survived. Powell ran out of the door screaming, "I'm mad! I'm mad!" And after a 12-day manhunt, Booth was trapped in a barn and, with seemingly cosmic justice, was shot in the back of the head, a wound from which he died 2 hours later. The other conspirators were captured by the end of the month, tried, found guilty, and executed along with Mary Surratt, convicted as a co-conspirator for aiding and abetting the assassins. She was the first woman, by the way, ever executed by the U.S. government. Good movies about this. Okay, here's the other ones. Again, think of the Bayesian way of thinking of our priors. Lone assassins, deranged weirdos, mentally ill people with guns. President James Garfield was shot on July 2nd, 1881, at the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station in Washington, D.C., where he was to deliver a speech before departing on a vacation. He died of his injuries 79 days later on September 19th, barely 6 months into his term, killed by a lone nep named Charles Guiteau. Guiteau believed he was personally responsible in part for Garfield's electoral defeat of Ulysses S. Grant and felt he was unrewarded for his role. Okay, this is delusional. This is delusions of grandeur. 5 years earlier, his own family tried to have him permanently committed to an asylum, but he escaped. He then set himself the task of killing a U.S. president, stating, "I leave my justification to God." After he shot Garfield, Guiteau declared, "I am a stalwart of the stalwarts. I did it, and I want to be arrested. Arthur is now president," referring to Vice President Chester A. Arthur. As a result of this confession, conspiracy theories that Arthur was behind The assassination emerged, but they were never supported by the evidence. During his trial, Guiteau invoked the newly introduced insanity plea. This is the McNaughton law that was then imported to America. That if you are mentally ill and you don't know the difference between right and wrong or legal and illegal, then you can be not guilty by way of insanity rather than the other way. During his trial, he invoked this and he announced that he planned to run for president himself after he was acquitted. Okay? Delusional. He was found guilty and hung on June 30th, 1882, waving to the crowd and reciting a poem he wrote titled, "I Am Going to the Lordy." Oh, Lord. President William McKinley was assassinated on September 6, 1901, at the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York, by an anarchist named Leon Slogotch, who was standing in the reception line where McKinley was shaking hands, and then he shot him. McKinley died 8 days later from his wounds, and Slogotch was sentenced to death by electric chair. This is, by the way, when Teddy Roosevelt became president. Teddy Roosevelt was the vice president, and then there's an attempt on his life as well I'll get to in a minute. Slogotch was sentenced to death by electric chair shortly after Congress passed legislation requiring Secret Service protection for all future presidents. So that's when that started in 1882. Slogotch was following in the tradition of European anarchists who had assassinated or attempted to assassinate half a dozen members of royal houses in the late 19th century. Again, lone actors. After Slogotch's execution, Buffalo police announced that they believed he had not acted alone, and they arrested several other anarchists on suspicion of conspiracy. These alleged cohorts were all eventually released when no evidence was presented to try them in a court of law. But subsequent suspicions of anarchists produced surveillance programs leading to the formation of, wait for it, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That's right, the FBI in 1908. Unsuccessful presidential assassination attempts have included those on Andrew Jackson, Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, Gerald Ford, and Ronald Reagan, all by lone, unhinged sociopaths. On January 30th, 1835, President Andrew Jackson was fired upon outside the U.S. Capitol building by a mentally ill house painter named Richard Lawrence, whose pistol misfired twice in rainy weather. None other than Representative Davy Crockett, yeah, that guy, wrestled the would-be assassin to the ground, whereupon President Jackson beat him with his cane. Conspiracy theories about the assassination attempt were proposed, figuring Jackson's arch-rival, Senator John C. Calhoun, but no evidence of a plot was ever uncovered, and Lawrence spent the rest of his life in an insane asylum. On October 14th, 1912, former President Teddy Roosevelt was running again on a third-party ticket, the Progressive or Bull Moose Party. While campaigning in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Roosevelt was shot by a saloon keeper named John Schrank. Roosevelt survived because the bullet was slowed down by passing through his steel eyeglass case and a 50-page, twice-folded manuscript of the speech he was about to deliver, which he famously did in his blood-soaked shirt. You can see pictures of this, both the bloodied shirt and the speech with a bullet hole through it. And his opening line is classics. "Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know whether you fully understand that I have just been shot, but it takes more than that to kill a bull moose." The analogies with Trump are quite obvious. Schrank was found legally insane and was institutionalized until his death. On February 15th, 1933, a disgruntled Italian immigrant named Giuseppe Zangara fired 5 shots at President-elect Franklin Roosevelt when the latter was giving a speech in an open car in Miami, Florida. But all the bullets missed their intended target. One hit and killed the Chicago mayor, Anton Cermak. So conspiracy theories arose about who the real intended target was. Zangara pleaded guilty and confessed to the assassination attempt. "I have the gun in my hand," he said. "I kill kings and presidents first, and next, all the capitalists." Oh, great. Okay, a month later, he was executed by the electric chair. Back then, they did not have the decades-long series of appeals. You found guilty, sentenced to death, and that's it. It's over. On September 5th, 1975, Charles Manson family cult member Lynette Squeaky Fromm, I remember when this happened, took a shot at President Gerald Ford in Sacramento, California to protest environmental pollution and the Ford administration's policy about that, but she missed. She spent the rest of her life in prison, proclaiming her undying devotion to Manson. Here's her quote. "The curtain is going to come down on all of us, and if we don't turn everything over to Charlie immediately, it will be too late." Again, deranged, mentally ill, sociopathic, psychopathic, crazy lone assassins. Much more likely that's going to be the case with the Trump shooter. On March 30th, 1981, again, I remember when this happened, also John Hinckley Jr. shot President Ronald Reagan in Washington, D.C., in order, he said, to impress the actress Jodie Foster, after he became obsessed with her in the film Taxi Driver. Hinckley claimed he was insane. Yes, indeed. At the time of the attempted assassination, 3 government-appointed psychiatrists determined that he was sane because of the extensive advanced planning required to attempt a political assassination, but his defense-appointed psychiatrist diagnosed him with several mental disorders, including schizophrenia, spectrum disorder, and paradoxical rage. The jury agreed with the defense, and rather than be in prison for shooting the president, Hinckley was sent to St. Elizabeth's, a mental hospital in Washington, D.C., and he just got out, I think, maybe 2 years ago. He still lives with his mother. Okay, what about JFK? All right. This is the mother of all conspiracy theories. I am in the minority, along with my friends Gerald Posner, the late Vincent Bugliosi, and a handful of others who think it was a lone assassin. I think the evidence is overwhelming. But for all the reasons I went through, event magnitude, proportionality bias, anomaly hunting, personal incredulity, hindsight bias, patternicity, and teleological thinking, the majority of Americans still believe that Kennedy was killed by a cabal of some sorts. Usually the CIA is probably the most common. When I ask conspiracists, who did it? I rarely get a name, like it was this guy here and here he is, go arrest him. Right? No, it's something generic like the CIA or they or the mafia. Who in the mafia? Or the KGB. Who in the KGB? And so on. Right? This is the problem. And so, as you know, the Warren Commission, appointed by the new president, Johnson, in which Gerald Ford, by the way, future president, was on the Warren Commission, found that Oswald acted alone. 889-page report, which nobody reads. They go anomaly hunting through it and find weird things that they, because of the argument from personal incredulity, don't believe, point to Oswald as the lone assassin. In the 1970s, after the Zapruder film was released to the public, everybody could see Kennedy's head blowing off and going back and to the left, made famous in Oliver Stone's film JFK. The government instituted a new investigation into this and still found that Oswald acted alone, or at least they could find nobody else who might have, or no other agency or anybody else. The only thing that come out of that 1970s issue was that there was a sound on one of the motorcycle's recording devices in which you could apparently hear an extra shot there. But when it was later reanalyzed carefully, it was shown that that particular sound, probably a backfire of the motorcycle and not a gunshot, happened about a minute after the motorcade had already left Dealey Plaza. So it could not have been one of the shots that killed Kennedy. But that aside, using the convergence of evidence argument, salience of inductions, as it's called in philosophy of science, convergence of evidence, all the evidence points to Lee Harvey Oswald. No evidence points to converges to any other person or agency. It's all just hand-waving and speculation about who might have been motivated to kill President Kennedy. Well, every president has people that hate them and are motivated to kill them. That doesn't mean anything, right? Let me go through just a few of the factoids about Oswald, why it's obvious he's the lone assassin. Whether he had other people or not, I'm pretty sure not, and people can make the case for that, but you can't deny that Oswald shot Kennedy and was very likely a lone assassin. Here I'd recommend Gerald Posner's book, Case Closed, which is an extensive biography of Oswald and why he very Very, very, very Bayesian 99.9% probably did it alone. And if you want to go through like all the alternative conspiracy theories, Vincent Bugliosi's book, Reclaiming History, it's like 1,600 pages long. You can get the audio edition. It's only like 20 hours, so it's a reduced version. But he really points out all the explanations for the anomaly that the anomaly hunters find. Okay, so let me just go through a few of these factoids that really point to Oswald as the lone assassin, and that'll close us out here. Oswald was born in New Orleans in 1939, joined the Marines in the 1950s, where he received riflery training. Contrary to what Oliver Stone had one of his characters say in the film, that Oswald shot Maggie's drawers, meaning he couldn't even hit the target, Oswald scored the second highest rating possible in riflery, making him a sharpshooter. I think it was Posner that tracked down his Marine riflery training evaluation. And if you go to Dealey Plaza and visit the 6th floor of the former Texas School Book Depository building, it's now a museum, you can look right out the shooter's window, and there on the street there's 2 X's, big X's, and you go down the street, you can stand there and look up at the 6th floor of the Book Depository building. You can see the window. It's close. I mean, it is a small environment. In our imagination, Dealey Plaza is huge because of its importance, but it's small. And so when you look down, you can see the first X is the throat shot, and the second X is the headshot that killed him. Politically, Oswald was an avowed communist who defected to Russia in 1959, worked in a radio factory in Minsk for 2 years, and married a Russian woman named Marina. After he grew disenchanted with the USSR, in 1962 he moved to Dallas, Texas, shortly after telling friends he wanted to relocate to Cuba to join Castro's communist revolution. This background helps establish a motive for killing Kennedy, as the president was avowedly anti-communist, and after the failed Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba, also clearly anti-Cuban and anti-Castro. Yes, the CIA did do some nefarious things back then, like attempting to assassinate Castro, again, a foreign leader, not that they're going to kill their own president, but in any case, I will acknowledge that. By the way, on that Bay of Pigs debacle, Kennedy, the plans by the CIA for the invasion of Cuba by Cuban nationalists living in Florida, trained by the CIA, was actually hatched during the Eisenhower administration. So Kennedy inherited that. And so when it came time to actually implement the plan, Kennedy was informed by the CIA of a number of facts that simply were not true. And after that, he was pretty upset and blurted out something like, "I'd like to break the CIA into 1,000 pieces." This has come back, this quote has come back to be used by conspiracists to say, see, he wanted to destroy the CIA, and that's why they had him killed. Okay. People just say things when they're mad. Like he's not like he's going to take apart the CIA. He could have just ordered a presidential order to dismantle the CIA, but he didn't. I don't even know if you could do that, but he didn't. Temperamentally, Oswald was emotionally unhinged and suffered from delusions of grandeur, telling people he had ambitions to someday do something to make himself famous. He very likely was a sociopath and quite possibly expressed the personality traits of psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism. These are called the dark triad. Dark because the combination often leads to malevolent actions. While in Dallas, Oswald encountered the anti-communist crusader Edward Walker, a retired general who was something of a conspiracy theorist himself. Once accused U.S. Supreme Court Justice Earl Warren of plotting to destroy the United States by banning prayer in schools and promoting civil rights for minorities. Yes, this was the early 60s and the bad old days. And there were a lot of people that thought like that. In April 1963, just 8 months before he assassinated Kennedy, Oswald attempted to kill General Walker by shooting at him from around 100 feet outside his home. Walker was struck with bullet fragments in his forearm and survived. Apparently the bullet hit the door frame or something and deflected. After the Kennedy assassination, it was determined that Oswald used the same firearm for both, an Italian-made 6.5 millimeter Mannlicher Carcano bolt-action rifle, which he purchased by mail order in March 1963, along with a .38 Smith & Wesson revolver, leaving a paper trail investigators later uncovered. In other words, we have the receipts. The same Mannlicher Carcano rifle was found among some boxes near the sniper's nest on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository building, and 3 spent Mannlicher Carcano cartridges were scattered on the floor in the sniper's nest. After Oswald tried to kill General Walker, he told his wife Marina what he had done. According to her, he also planned to assassinate Richard Nixon when the former vice president, future president, visited Dallas, but she locked him in the bathroom to stop him. Okay, this guy was delusional, deranged. After the JFK assassination, the Warren Commission determined that it was Oswald who attempted to murder General Walker. That summer, Oswald created the New Orleans chapter of the pro-Castro organization called Fair Play for Cuba. He was its only member, and he was arrested for getting into fights with anti-Castro Cubans, further evidence of his violent tendencies. In September 1963, okay, so we're just months away from killing Kennedy, after his wife talked him out of hijacking a plane to Cuba, Oswald traveled to Mexico City in order to procure a visa to travel to Cuba. But the Cuban embassy said they would only give him a visitor's visa if he would be returning to the Soviet Union with his family, which he refused to do. So he went to the Soviet embassy, where he encountered 3 undercover KGB agents who later reported that Oswald seemed unhinged, so they put him off. Oswald then returned to Dallas, where on October 16th, okay, we're just weeks away, he started work at the Texas School Book Depository building. Now, conspiracists have made a big deal about the fact that, he got a job at the building that just happened to be on Kennedy's parade route. Come on, okay? Back to our conspiracism principle of never attributing to malice, which could be better explained by incompetence and chance. That route wasn't determined until the week before the president's visit to Dallas. Again, I think it was Gerald Posner that chased that down. Of course, that might have been also in the, I think that was in the Warren Commission report. Anyway, well after Oswald got the job there. Co-workers saw Oswald on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository building shortly before JFK's motorcade arrived, and they report they saw him exit shortly after the assassination. The sniper's nest on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository building was constructed out of boxes which Oswald left his fingerprints on. 3 bullet casings were found in the sniper's nest, indicating he took 3 shots. And this matches what 81% of eyewitnesses, or ear witnesses in this case in Dealey Plaza, reported hearing: 3 shots. Subsequent tests with Mannlicher Carcano rifle, particularly that mentioned in the 1979 House Select Committee report, which I mentioned earlier, found that 3 shots can easily be taken in the 8 seconds that Oswald had to get off the shots. Some researchers put it at 10 seconds. That is, if the first bullet's already chambered and you have the gun cocked and ready to go, the clock starts, boom, you already have 1, so you only need 2 more shots in the remaining 8 seconds. And test after test show it only takes 3.3 seconds to squeeze off those, well, really 3 shots, but bam, and then bam, bam, done. Okay? The 3 shell casings found in the sniper's nest carry distinct ballistic markings on them, indicating that they were fired from Oswald's rifle. The one recovered bullet at Parkland Memorial Hospital, where Kennedy and Texas Governor Connally, who was also hit by a bullet, the first bullet to strike JFK. The so-called magic bullet was not magic at all. I have charts and descriptions in here to show why that is a crazy idea. And then after my book was published, actually, there was one of the Secret Service agents, it was one of the retired Secret Service agents that said, explained where that bullet came from. He put it there on the gurney at the hospital. After killing Kennedy, Oswald went home, picked up his .38 Smith & Wesson revolver, and left again. Shortly thereafter, he was stopped by Dallas patrolman J.D. Tippit. Oswald killed him with 4 bullets, an act witnessed by 10 observers, and the bullet casings on the scene matched Oswald's .38 Smith & Wesson. Oswald then fled the scene and ducked into a nearby theater without paying. The police were summoned to the theater, where they confronted Oswald. Oswald pulled out his revolver and attempted to shoot the first officer, but the gun was wrestled away from him, and he was arrested, saying, "Well, it's all over now." Actually, it was all over for Oswald 2 days later, when at 11:21 a.m. Central Time on Sunday, November 24th, 2 days after he shot Kennedy. Dallas nightclub operator Jack Ruby walked into Dallas police headquarters when Oswald was being transferred to the city jail and shot him dead at point-blank range. Again, you've all seen the video. It's on YouTube. And yet another eerie coincidence, Oswald was rushed to Parkland Memorial Hospital and pronounced dead 2 days to the hour after President Kennedy died in the same hospital. Okay, that's enough of that. Conspiracists, JFK conspiracists will pick through everything I just said, but you just have nothing to point to anybody else other than Oswald. Okay, that's enough on the Oswald thing. You can read my chapter in that book and all that other stuff. And again, read Posner's book and Vincent Bugliosi's book for even more in-depth analysis of all these little anomalies. Okay, so again, it's Tuesday, July 16th. There's still much we don't know about the assassination attempt of President Trump, and that it remains to be seen whether victims there might be from the shooting. So it's a tragic event. It's going to be one of these, where were you when that happened? It's fortunate, again, chance. And even the conspiracists are saying it was just chance and luck. It didn't blow Trump's brains out, because he just happened to turn in a way that the bullet grazed him. Let me see. It's his right ear, right? Yeah. So he just happened. Had he turned this way, the bullet would have gone through the side of his head and blown out at the back of his brains. Instead, he happened to turn this way, so the bullet winged him. There's charts online you can see of this. It's quite stunning. I mean, that much of history turns on these just small, tiny little random events. The same might have happened with Kennedy in the other direction. Had when the first shot was taken and the very first shot missed, and then the second shot was through the throat. Had the driver accelerated the car after the first shot, or swerved a little left or whatever, Oswald might have missed, and history would have been quite different. So much of history turns on that. I do think probably what's likely to happen is that there's going to be a house cleaning at the Secret Service. Probably new people are going to be brought in, and training methods are going to be reevaluated. And in other police departments, I would imagine, given what happened with the local police not responding to, for 2 minutes, people in the audience yelling at them, "There's a guy with a gun on the roof right there." That they're going to have to reinforce this. If you see something, say something. And if you're a police, listen and do something about what people are telling you. Again, when something like that happens to regular people like me, I'd probably be shocked. I'd probably be standing there going, "What? A guy with a gun? What?" And maybe seconds would go by, or maybe a minute or two before I would, clear my head and think, okay, well, what should I do? But police, this is their job. They're supposed to be trained to do this. So I have a feeling that not only the Secret Service, but local police departments everywhere a president may show up to give a speech are going to be trained on this particular incident. Be sure and check out any suspicious looking people and say something immediately so that we can do something about it. Okay, that's probably enough on this. Maybe I'll have more to say about it in future episodes of the podcast as we learn more. But as the RNC convention unfolds this week, I'm sure this is going to be discussed a lot as a motivator for people voting Republican rather than Democrat. Remains to be seen what's going to happen with the Democrats. I wasn't going to really get into this subject at all, but it seems obvious that they have to replace Biden. I mean, he can barely string a sentence or two together. Even his responses to the assassination attempt on Trump, it's just painful to listen to him speaking that, they have to find somebody new soon so that person has time to build up some support and so on. So, but that all remains to be seen. This is a crazy year. 2024 has been a crazy year. Not just for my little wheelhouse of conspiracies and anomalies and weird things that happen, but just wow, what a year. Okay, let's hope we all get to the end of it and we're all still here to talk. All right, thanks for listening. I'm Michael Shermer. This is the Michael Shermer Show. As always, brought to you by the Skeptic Society and Skeptic Magazine. please go to skeptic.com for more information.